In the crowded living room, David Hart waved a folded invoice like a prosecutor's exhibit.
Dad's funeral was over $15,000. You haven't paid 1 cent, Elena.
A murmur spread through the aunts and cousins.
I was at the hospital every day. I held his hand.
You think that's enough? Mom and I did everything. You disappeared when the bills came.
Linda Hart sat nearby, her lips pressed into a satisfied line.
He doesn't know, and he won't. Not tonight.
You'll pay your share tonight, or I'll make sure every relative here knows you did nothing.
This isn't the place to discuss money.
She set down her teacup without a tremor, meeting his glare with that quiet, bittersweet smile. Whatever truth she guarded, it wouldn't break under his shouting. 6 months earlier, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and dying flowers, Elena sat beside her father's bed.
I am going to take care of everything, Dad. You don't need to worry about a thing. He can't hear me anymore, but I'll keep my promise.
3 days later, she walked through the heavy oak doors of Callahan Funeral Home.
Miss Hart, this is unusual. Most families wait until the end.
I want to handle it now, quietly. My father must never feel he's a burden.
I'll keep this between us. You have my word.
She signed the prepayment contract on the 15th of March, covering every expense the mortuary could foresee. She left the funeral home with a lighter step and a heavier secret. That evening, she returned to her father's bedside and held his hand, knowing she had already bought him peace. Thomas Hart drew his last breath on a Thursday morning. Linda wailed as if the room were a stage.
He's gone. My sweet Thomas. What will I do without you?
David stood rigid, calculating costs. Elena held a trembling water glass against the wall.
They don't see me. They never do. But it's done.
The call came to her apartment 2 days later. She sank onto the sofa, the weight of finality pressing down. At the funeral, Linda and David sat front pew, nodding as guests offered condolences. Elena chose the back row.
Everything fell on us, but we made sure Dad got a proper send-off.
Elena heard the lie and said nothing. A single tear traced her cheek, but her expression remained composed.
I paid for this peace. He knows. That's enough.
After the burial, while the family accepted casseroles and pity, Elena slipped out the side door and drove home alone. 3 nights after the burial, Elena sat alone in her apartment, the silence pressing against her ears like an accusation. An email arrived from Linda. The subject line was blunt. Your share of funeral expenses. The body itemized every cost. Embalming, $800. Casket, $2,400. Service fees, a total of $6,200.
He actually did it. Sent me a bill for Dad, as if I were a stranger.
She read it twice, her jaw tightening. Not shock, bitter confirmation that no kindness went unpunished. Then, unbidden, a flash of Arthur's office, the scratch of the pen, the receipt sliding across the desk.
It's taken care of, Elena. You paid in full months ago.
The memory landed like a stone in still water. She released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. With steady hands, she opened a reply window and typed a deliberate sentence. Her response read, "We should discuss this in person, not over email. Let's talk soon." David's reply arrived not in text, but in the crackling voice of a man who felt robbed.
Discuss it in person. We sent you a bill, Elena, not a dinner invitation. You owe $6,000. I don't want your placating words. Transfer the money by Friday, or I'll make the whole family see your true colors.
Elena held the phone away, his anger a hot buzzing that didn't touch her. She waited, then spoke. A text from Linda arrived. Your father would be so disappointed in your selfishness.
They really believe I am the selfish one. That's almost funny.
By evening, a family group message announced a gathering at Linda's to discuss estate matters. The message read, "Attendance expected. We need to settle Dad's affairs as a family."
They'll corner me publicly. So be it.
She set the reminder, then pulled out the gray turtleneck she saved for hard days. Elena parked outside her mother's house, took a steadying breath, and walked toward the door, as if approaching a witness stand. Inside, relatives filled the living room. A dozen conversations hushed as she entered. David was on her before she'd taken 3 steps. The invoice already unfolded in his grip.
Everyone take a look. This is the bill for Dad's funeral. And Elena hasn't paid a dime.
Relatives glanced away, whispering behind cupped hands. The air thickened with discomfort.
David, this isn't the place. We can discuss it privately. Like I said,
No! We'll discuss it now. Why should you hide? You did nothing while Mom and I handled everything.
Linda watched from her armchair, a faint smile of anticipation curling at the corner of her lips.
he's playing his part. Let him. The truth will speak when it's time.
The room waited for a crack in her composure that never came. She simply stood, a quiet center in a storm.
You didn't even choose the flowers, Elena. You didn't call the pastor. You just cried in a corner like a child.
The relatives looked away. A few whispered. Some pitied Elena. Others believed her guilty.
I signed on the 15th of March. While he was still alive, I paid in full.
Say something. Defend yourself. Everyone here thinks you are a selfish liar.
Elena's teacup sat steady on its saucer. Not a ripple disturbed the amber liquid. Linda's satisfied smile wavered. For the first time, her eyes betrayed a sliver of doubt.
I said everything I needed to say at his bedside. Tonight isn't about words, David.
David's face darkened, his knuckles white around the crumpled invoice.
Not yet. Just hold on a little longer.
The silence stretched until the only sound was the clock on the mantel, ticking toward something inevitable. The front door opened with a soft click. Arthur Callahan stepped inside, greeted by an elderly aunt who took his coat. He scanned the room, and the laughter died in his throat. The festive cluster of relatives had become a ring around a silent woman.
Typical Elena. Always the victim, never taking responsibility. She expects us to pay for her silence.
Elena's eyes lifted just enough to meet Arthur's across the crowd.
He came. Now wait for the right moment.
Arthur's face registered no surprise, only a deepening resolve.
So this is how they treat her. Thomas warned me it might come to this.
David, oblivious, continued his rant, his voice rising with each accusation. Arthur took a step closer, slipping past the relatives, who still hadn't noticed him. He kept the folder close to his chest, waiting for the exact moment when the whole room would be forced to listen.
She didn't lift a finger for Dad's funeral. Not one call. Not $1. Look at this invoice.
He shoved the paper at the closest relative, then turned back to face her, chest heaving.
David, please. Don't do this in front of everyone.
But David was deaf to anything but his own fury, his voice climbing as he rallied the room against her.
She left us to handle everything. I paid the deposits out of my own pocket while she cried.
The accusation hung in the air, met with a few reluctant nods and averted eyes. Across the room, Arthur began to move, weaving around relatives who stepped aside, sensing the shift. He reached Elena's side, his hand resting lightly on her arm, a question in his eyes.
He's asking without words. The answer is yes.
She gave a slight nod, and Arthur straightened, his presence alone, bringing a sudden hush.
David, that's enough. I need a private word with Elena before this goes any further.
A private word? This is between family, Arthur. You don't get to.
I've known this family 40 years. You'll give us 5 minutes.
David's mouth opened and closed. No one defied Arthur Callahan when he used that tone. Arthur guided Elena into the small side room and closed the door until only a crack of light showed.
Elena, I have the documents. They're all here. Do you want me to end this now?
Yes, it's time they knew the truth.
Arthur opened the worn leather folder. The receipt lay crisp on top, dated the 15th of March. He walked back into the living room, with the folder held open, and every conversation stopped. The moment she'd guarded for so long was finally at hand. David's tirade cut off mid-syllable as Arthur Callahan re-entered the room, folder in hand, his presence demanding silence.
I've listened to enough. Before anyone else speaks, there's a something you all need to see.
He lifted the leather folder and opened it. The crack of the cover, the only sound in the room. Inside lay a single receipt, and beneath it, an envelope with Thomas Hart's handwriting on the front.
What is this? Some kind of theater? Another way to make Elena look good.
No, David. This is the truth your father ensured would be told. Sit down and listen.
David's face flushed scarlet, but he stumbled back a step, his gaze locked on the folder. Linda's smug smile vanished entirely, replaced by a white-knuckled grip on her armchair. Arthur lifted the receipt from the folder, holding it high enough for all to see the date and the signature. The room held its breath, the silence so sharp it seemed to cut through the amber light.
This receipt, dated the 15th of March, shows the funeral account for Thomas Hart was paid in full. By Elena Hart.
He turned the paper so everyone could see the signature. Elena Hart, in blue ink, steady and unwavering.
She arranged everything months before Thomas passed and asked me to keep it quiet, so he'd never feel like a burden.
David's face went white, the invoice slipping from his fingers to the floor. Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came. Her eyes darted between the receipt and her daughter. Around the room, whispers turned to murmurs of surprise. A few relatives exchanged glances of newfound respect.
The funeral was prepaid in full 6 months ago. The bill you sent her was for a debt that never existed.
That's not possible. I paid deposits. The funeral home told me there was a balance.
Whatever they told you, this receipt is proof. Elena Hart already paid for everything.
Elena remained still, her composure a quiet gift her father had known would be needed, and that Arthur had helped her deliver.
There's something else. Thomas left this with me, to be opened only now, when his children were together.
He withdrew a cream envelope. On the front, in Thomas's careful handwriting, was a single line, "To be opened in the presence of my children."
You can't just keep pulling out documents. This isn't a courtroom.
David, let her open it. For once, just be quiet and listen.
Arthur placed the envelope into Elena's steady hands and stepped back, his duty fulfilled.
The last thing he'll ever give me.
She slid a fingernail under the red wax seal and broke it with a soft snap that echoed through the silent room. The folded pages crackled as she drew them out, her fingers trembling for the first time.
Dad, what did you leave for us?
The room dissolved into a held breath as Elena's eyes fell to her father's last words, the silence a promise that everything was about to change. Elena's eyes moved down the page, her breath catching as the words formed. A tear finally escaped, tracing a slow path to her jaw.
I name Elena as executor of my estate, because she has given without wanting, and loved without demanding.
Executor, that can't be right. Dad wouldn't just bypass the rest of us.
This letter was legally witnessed and notarized. Elena is now the sole authority over Thomas's estate.
He never. I did everything for him. How could he?
Linda's legs gave way, and she sank onto the sofa, her face a mask of disbelief. Relatives exchanged stunned glances, the realization settling like a stone.
He saw me, truly saw beyond the silence.
Elena lifted her gaze from the paper, and the room seemed to hold its breath around her. She did not speak. Her composure was answer enough, a quiet dignity that filled the space.
This letter is fake. You coached her, Arthur. My father would never bypass his own son.
I've known Thomas since we were boys. This letter was written in my office, notarized, and sealed in my presence. It's authentic.
David's mouth worked soundlessly. His last defense crumbled. Linda turned her face away, her shoulders slumping. From the back, an elderly cousin whispered, "Thomas always said Elena had the real heart." A murmur of agreement followed. David stumbled backward and dropped onto the sofa beside his mother. His fight extinguished. Arthur gave Elena's shoulder a brief, reassuring squeeze, then stepped aside. The room's atmosphere shifted. The authority was no longer theirs to claim.
He trusted me. I won't fail him.
She lifted the letter, and every eye followed. The next words she spoke would shape the estate.
I carry no grudge. My father raised me to value grace over grievance. The estate he left will not fund anger. It will fund what he cherished, compassion. I am donating the full amount to the hospice that cared for him. in his name. That place gave him dignity when he was most vulnerable. I owe them more than money.
A few relatives dabbed their eyes. The shame in the room was palpable, but so was a tentative respect.
Mom, David, I want you there when they unveil the plaque. He was your husband, your father.
Linda's chin trembled, but she didn't answer. Her eyes flickered with something that might have been shame or sorrow. David stared at the floor, his jaw set, but he didn't refuse.
This isn't about winning. It's about honoring the man we all claim to have loved.
Quietly, the gathering dispersed. No one applauded, but many squeezed Elena's hand as they left. The tide had turned. Weeks passed in quiet coordination. Elena signed the final donation papers, watching her father's legacy become real. Cream invitations bearing the hospice seal were mailed to Linda and David. The date was set for late October.
Dad would have loved the garden. It faces east, toward the sunrise he always painted.
The afternoon before the ceremony, she walked the grounds alone. A covered plaque stood near the entrance. She pressed her palm against the cold brass, feeling the engraved letters beneath the cloth.
I kept your promise. Now, help me keep mine tomorrow.
A nurse passed by and offered a quiet smile, then left her to her silence. As dusk settled, she returned to her car. The invitation hung in the air. Would they come? She drove home with her father's photograph on the passenger seat, his gentle eyes watching over her. Tomorrow, the plaque would be unveiled. Whatever happened, she had honored him in the way he would have chosen. The October morning broke clear over the hospice garden. Chairs in neat rows faced a covered plaque, and a soft breeze carried the scent of chrysanthemums. Elena stepped to the microphone, her gray turtleneck a quiet echo of the day she had steeled herself for confrontation.
My father believed that the truest gifts are given in private, without fanfare, without expectation. Today I fulfill his last wish, to use what he left, not for anger, but for compassion. This wing is his legacy of grace.
She turned and pulled the white cloth. The brass plaque caught the sunlight. Thomas Hart Memorial Wing. In the second row, Linda pressed a tissue to her eyes. Her lip quivered, and for once the tears looked real. David remained stone still, his jaw clenched, his gaze fixed on the name shining in brass. He didn't blink.
See, Dad, they came. And whoever they are, your name will outlast all of us.
A moment of silence settled over the garden, broken only by the distant birdsong. No one spoke. There was nothing left to prove. Then a gentle applause began, not loud, but sincere. It washed over Elena like absolution. As the crowd dispersed, Linda approached Elena with hesitant steps. Her tissue was still pressed to her nose.
Elena, I didn't know what you did. I didn't know.
No, you didn't, but now you do.
Linda opened her mouth as if to say more, but the words evaporated. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. David stood apart, hands in pockets, facing the plaque. He did not turn when Elena passed. She paused for a heartbeat, then walked on, her breath visible in the cool air.
I don't need his apology. The plaque says enough.
The garden path wound past autumn flowers, and she walked it slowly, carrying the weight that had finally lifted. Arthur stood by the hospice entrance, watching her with a quiet nod of recognition. She did not look back. The closure she sought was not in their mouths, but in her own peace, and she had finally found it. Inside the hospice chapel, silence pooled like lamplight. Elena slipped into a back pew.
6 months since the diagnosis. I did what I promised.
The weight of those months settled in her chest. The prepayment, the accusations, the waiting.
He smiled the day I said I'd always be there. He didn't know I'd already paid for everything.
She closed her eyes and heard his voice, gentle as the day he slipped into sleep.
I kept my promise, Dad. Every part of it.
Some victories are spoken. Some debts are paid in silence. She opened her eyes and the world seemed lighter, as if the chapel walls had exhaled. She rose, smoothing her gray turtleneck. and walked toward the door. Behind her, the plaque would speak for itself. Ahead, only the road home. The cemetery lay hushed under a sky, streaked with rose. Elena walked between the headstones, her footsteps soft on the grass. She stopped before a simple granite stone. Thomas Hart. The letters were already familiar, like a father's handwriting. From her coat, she drew a single white rose, its petals still fresh. She kissed the bloom and laid it at the base. She knelt and pressed her palm flat against the stone, the cold granite warming under her touch.
Rest easy, Dad. Everything is finished.
She stayed there, not praying, simply present. The silence was not empty. It was full of everything already given. The sun dipped lower, painting the clouds amber and violet. She rose slowly, one last look, and then she turned. Her silhouette cut a quiet figure against the fading light. She would drive home alone, but not lonely. The weight she carried had become a quiet strength. The white rose glowed in the last light, a silent testament that some promises never fade. The white rose rested against the granite, its petals catching the final rays of sun. A breeze stirred the quiet, carrying the scent of earth and evening. Elena was gone, but the promise she kept still hung in the air, a lasting fragrance. Some debts are not settled in courtrooms. They are paid in the silence between heartbeats. She never sought applause, never demanded recognition. She only wanted her father's peace, and that, in the end, was the greatest inheritance she could have given him. The camera drew back, the headstone becoming a small white mark in the twilight. Overhead, the first stars shimmered, and the cemetery whispered with the voices of the past. Elena Hart walked home under that same sky, her burden lifted, her honor intact. The screen faded to black, leaving only the stillness and the memory of a quiet victory.